Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to our new lesson for today. My name is Miss Wildy Anne Villanueva. This is Understanding Culture, Society, and Politics, and we were going to learn about enculturation and socialization. These are the key factors in development of an individual's concept of self. So let's begin. And here is your learning guide for today's lesson. Proponents of the social learning theory argue that the set of behavior of an individual is acquired through enculturation and socialization processes. The variation in human behavior is attributed to the differences in cultural templates of every society that the individual learns from. Proponents of sociobiology counters this perspective by advocating that humans acquire their behavior genetically or galing sa parents. More specifically, beneficial biological traits are naturally selected and passed on the next generation. And these behavioral traits are linked to biological traits necessary for survival in specific environment, are naturally selected with generation and get passed on the next. Okay, para maintindihan natin ito, magbigay tayo ng example na maaari nating narinig na dati, which is nature and nurture. Lagi tayong interesado, ano nga ba ang pinagmula ng behavior? Ang iba, sabi, from nature or internal characteristics ang nakaka-influence sa behavior natin. Ang iba naman sabi ay from external environment, the way the person nurtured. Gusto ko lang i-point out ngayon na ang sociology ay mahalagang tool or discipline that is especially designed to study the nurturing aspect of society and human life. So, we can say that sociology is the science of nurture. How is culture ingrained in children? Is it through biological inheritance, nature, or through cultural inheritance, nurture? The issue on nature and nurture has been a long-standing debate in the fields of social sciences, such as sociology and anthropology. Two primary opposing perspectives are held by social learning theorists and sociobiologists. Sociologists in general way operate on the assumption that when a child's born or being a baby, they're like a blank paper or box or empty computer screen. Walang laman. Ang bata ay dapat na tinuturuan at ma-expose sa values, norms, and rules na associated sa society na ginagalawan niya. Hindi kasi siya pre-programmed na pagkapanganak ay may alam ka na agad, ganun. Example, sa culture nating mga Filipino, considered rude sa atin. Kapag tinititigan mo yung isang tao, especially kung medyo naiiba siya than usual. Kaso, mahirap naman sa bata yung ganun because they are curious about things and the way they see someone different, they want to look at them. Siguro narinig mo na or na-experience mo na yun. Our parents constantly tell us, huwag mong tignan yan, huwag mong hawakan. Ganon. Hanggang sa pagtanda natin, it becomes automatic. Tumataas na yung kilay natin when we see something different mula sa mga natutunan natin noong bata pa tayo. And this process goes from being helpless infant to full functioning member of the society na natutunan natin na values, norms, and rules of the society. Ito ay tinatawag na socialization. Mga natutunan natin na nagiging automatic na sa atin ngayon. And socialization is the process by which we learn to function as members of the society without being thinking about it. It's a curious aspect of human nature that as we accustom to the something, we tend to think of that thing as being natural. Kaya marami sa atin, ang tingin natin, ang values, norms, and rules ay nakalakihan na natin. And ito yung most natural or tinatawag nating most right. Pero ang iba, taken for granted yung mga ganun. Values, norms, and rules. tuloy hanggang pagtandaan nila or nagkaroon sila ng mga anak, tila hindi nakaka-distinguish ng kung ano ang tama o mali yung bata. Saka lang nila marirealize na mahalaga pala itong tinuturo ng parents sa mga bata or sa anak nila kung kailan embarrass na sila or napapahiya na sila dahil sa behavior ng mga bata, lalo pag magkasama sila. Because they themselves take the behavior for granted for their children na hindi natutunan. Socialization is an important concept when we study childhood development, but it's also important for adults switches from a familiar or old situation to an unfamiliar or new situation. There's often period or process of socialization that needs to occur. Example of this, a new job. Pag lumipat ka sa ibang city or pumasok ka sa isang bagong relationship, it acquire or require the adoption and integration of new values, norms, and rules. Pag mas malaki yung differences ng old at new, syempre mas dramatic yung process. Example nito is, kapag pumasok ka sa military or nakulong ka or pumasok ka sa isang bagong religion. Sociologists use the term resocialization to describe the transformation that occurs a person's behavior and worldview. In instances when a person does not get socialized or enculturated, it is possible that his or her behavior would resemble from that of other animals, gaya nung napanood natin nung nakaraang linggo. This was observed among the feral children or wild children of France. They were labeled as such due to their display of animalistic behavior upon their discovery. One of the most famous cases is that of Victor, who was popularly known as the Boy of Aveyron. Victor lived in the forest alone from his 4th to 12th year. He was found in 1797 by locals and was taken by Jean-Marc Gaspard, a physician who gave him his name. For years, Itard and other scientists attempted to teach Victor spoken language, to no avail. Recent studies on the documents on Victor revealed that he may have been left in the forest by his parents who physically abused. When he was siguro mga 6 or 7 years old. A probable reason for the abandonment of Victor's mental condition because he displayed the signs of autism, and the case of feral children was also recorded in other parts of the world. However, no conclusive scientific study has still been conducted and accomplished about the topic. We have learned that through enculturation and socialization, an individual learns the norms of his or her society. The compilation of the values, attitudes, and beliefs that an individual receives from their family, peers, and community enables them to create a personal identity that stimulates or simultaneously separate from the other members of the group and incorporates them in the system. And such differentiation from the general social template ay tinatawag na individuation, and this can be related to the concept of the personal identity. Socialization describes the process by which people learn the attitude, values, and behavior that are appropriate and expected by the culture and the community. And it typically occurs through the observation of and interaction with the other people we are surrounded by. Kasama din dito yung mga malalapit sa atin kagaya yung family, friends, and teachers. At kasama rin dito yung mga nakakasalamuhan natin araw-araw, kagaya ng neighbors, nurses, classmates, and even the celebrities na nakikita natin lagi sa TV or vlog. Mga tao na nasa labas, nakakasalubong natin, mga nasa supermarket. They all have something to teach us about how we should act within our community. But socialization also shapes our self-image or how we view ourselves. And sociologists Charles Cooley used the term looking glass self to describe the process. He said that our view of ourselves comes not only from our direct contemplation of our personal qualities, but also from the perception about how we are being perceived by others. Meron itong tatlong steps. Number 1, we imagine how we must appear to others, to our family or friends or someone on the street. Pangalawa, we imagine how they must evaluate us based on their observations of us, kagaya ng matalino daw tayo, masiyahin, tawa ng tawa, bungis-ngis, mahiyain, or somewhat awkward. Pangatlo, we develop feeling about ourselves based on our impression of the other evaluations or other observations. Cooley theorized that we are not being influenced by the opinions of others, but instead we are being influenced by what we imagine the opinions of the other people to be. So according to his theory, we might develop our self-identities based on both correct and incorrect perception of how others see us. Example, meron kang teacher na nag-grade sa'yo ng very harsh or very critical, yung tipong pulang-pula na yung test paper mo sa dami ng correction. And she done that because she think that you actually had a lot of potential. So she graded your paper harshly to help you to reach it. And then your paper book, your exam notice na, yun nga, pulang-pula siya sa dami ng corrections. Ano yung magiging interpretation mo doon? And how might that influence your self-image? Number 1, yung unang interpretation, you might observe that your teacher criticizes you harshly. Yung pangalawang interpretation mo naman, possible na you'll think that your teacher probably did so because they see you as not being very intelligent. And yung pangatlong perception mo naman doon is maybe you came to the conclusion that based on this, you're probably not very good at analysis and writing. So, here you are acting incorrect perception of what you think your teacher believes. Magkaiba kayo. And dahil influence ng attitude ang behavior natin, maaaring mag-result ito sa di mo lalong pag-e-effort, baka hindi ka na pumasok, magtatampo ka na, sa mga pinapagawa sa'yo ng teachers mo. Whereas, kabaliktaran ng mga kung ano sana yung gusto ng teacher mo ang mangyayari. And but this is not the end of the story because it can also be influenced by the future interaction. Napakahalaga talaga ng interaction. So let's say na kinausap mo yung teacher mo. Pwedeng ito yung ginawa mo sana. After mo makita yung exam mo na pulang-pula, ang daming correction. Tapos tinanong mo siya bakit kanya ginrida ng ganun. At that point, your teacher might explain that they think you are on the right track, but you need to put a little more effort. And so, of this additional interaction, you were able to revise your incorrect perception and it could lead you to developing a different self-perspective. Socialization is a lifelong process and it begins in our families. Your father, mother, grandparents, or siblings is your entire social world when you're young. That's important because your family is the source of primary socialization. Your first experience society. Ang parents or guardians din natin ang nagsisilbing unang teachers sa atin na nagtuturo ng lahat. Meron tayong forms of socialization that starts at home. Number 1, gender socialization. Learning the psychological and social traits associated with the person's sex. Number 2, race socialization. The process through which children learn the behavior, values, and attitudes associated with racial groups. Example nito ay mga racial discrimination. Number 3, class socialization. teaches the norms, values, traits, and behavior you develop based on the social class you're in. But children also learn through secondary socialization. Ano yung tinatawag na secondary socialization? Secondary socialization is the process through which children become socialized outside the home within the society at large. Kagaya ng sa school, yun yung kauna-unahang yun yung pangalawa sa mga naging malaking society para sa atin. Kung saan una tayong natuto ng system of rules that requires in certain places or act differently, hindi gaya ng mga natutunan natin sa loob ng bahay. Sa school, hindi lang tayo tinuturo ang magbasa, magbilang, or magsulat. Meron din tayong tinatawag na social hidden curriculum. That is an education in norms, values, and beliefs that are passed along through schooling. Okay, naranasan mo na bang sumali sa spelling bee? Alam niyo ba na alam niyo ba na ang main goal nun talaga is learn how to spell. Pero ano yung mga hidden lessons na natutunan nyo nung sumali kayo sa mga competition? Kagaya ng spelling bee. Actually, it teaches you that being better than other is rewarding, and it enforces the idea of winners and losers. Another hidden curriculum sa school in general is to expose you to a variety of people. Kapag hindi kasi nasanay ka na nasa family mo lang or hindi ka lumalabas ng bahay, ang perspective mo ng socialization baka iisa lang. Ganun. Yung race, class, religion, politics, and etc. But once you go out in the world, you meet many people from many backgrounds, kagaya ng sa school, nagkakaroon tayo ng peer groups na tinatawag. And based a study ni James Coleman about the 4 main social categories, it turned out that who you hang out with affected how well you did in school. Now, Coleman's study might seem like common sense, of course. You and your friends are similar. So, totoo pala talaga siya. There are 2 primary theories related to the understanding of identity formation and practice. Ito yung tinatawag na role learning theory and theory on symbolic interactionism. Role learning theory promotes the argument that individuals learn a repertoire of social roles from their society. They then reproduce this repertoire in their behavior. Roles constitute the social facts, kagaya ng gender role, occupational role, family role, and etc. that inhibit, empower, and influence an individual's action. Conformity to this social fact is rewarded by acceptance from members of the society, whereas non-conformity or mga deviances results on ostracism. The primary argument against this theory is that it is too socialization deterministic, as it sidesteps a potential of humans to recreate roles and not just accept them. This weakness naman is addressed by the theory of symbolic interactionism, which promotes the idea that individuals construct their notion of the self through social interactions performed within a society. This implies na the roles and the performances are part of the creative process wherein the individual sees the behavior of others and responds to it by creating a role that it can play. This represents human as social actors performing within a cultural or social field. Kanina pa natin pinag-uusapan ang norms and values. Ano nga ba ang norms and values? The concept of cultural values refers to all those ideas held in society that are considered good, acceptable, and right. Cultural values inform the types of aspirations that members of the society aspire for, and these are labeled by social goals. A society that is rooted in individualism would have one of the social goals to have its dependent population emancipated from the parental support at an early age, while a society that is rooted in extensive kinship system would have the pooling of family members within one territory as a social goal. And such goals are achieved through socially approved norms that constitute beliefs, behavior, and material possessions. Using conflict theory, it can be said that these values and goals are sometimes the source of conflict within the society as individual having a varying access and experience relating to it. Bigay tayo ng example. The values which center of wealth, acquisition, and its accompanying prestige and power are not held true by all individuals in society, as those values are scarce and unattainable from some individuals. Meron din tayong tinatawag na functionalism theory. Another perspective ito ng values and goals, which argues that individuals exist to create unity and harmony within the structure and fulfill the needs of the individual. This uses the organismic view of society wherein its parts, kagaya ng parang mga organs, kagaya sa katawan natin, are interrelated and critical for its existence, kagaya ng mga organism. Values are created and upheld because they maintain the structure that promotes a social order. Example nito, ang values that Filipino attach to the family promote tightly knit communities that serve as support groups for individuals. Alam ko, relate kayo dyan. Because a society has a plethora of values and goals, conflict in the practice of these are possible. Ito sa mga sure ako makaka-relate kayo. The value that Filipinos put on family sometimes possess a great threat in practice of democratic governance in the country due to the compadrino system that leads to the nepotism and political dynasties by McCoy 2009. In this case, the ideal of culture of democratic society is encountered by the real culture of family-run political institutions. An ideal culture is what a society believes that it follows, whereas the real culture is what the society actually follows. There are 4 categories of norms, namely folkways, mores, taboos, and laws. Folkways are the socially approved behavior that have no moral underpinning. This includes a variety of actions that constitute acceptable or expected behavior drawn from the customs and conventions. Example nito, yung societies, kagaya ng sa Americans, consider it rude for a visitor to make slurping sounds when consuming soup, yung maingay, ganun. Whereas others, kagaya sa Chinese, mas encourage yung ganon kasi mas na-realize or mas sa kanila kapag maingay ka o humigop ng sabaw, ibig sabihin nun masarap yung luto mo. Next is mores. Mores are the norms related to moral conventions. This includes behavior that are considered acceptable in relation to religious practice. The use of artificial contraceptives, example nun, such as condoms and birth control pills, is frowned upon in highly religious societies, whereas it is accepted and even encouraged in others that do not strictly follow the conventional dictates of religious doctrines. Next is taboos. Some cultural prohibitions are strictly implemented from the others, kagaya nito. Taboos are behaviors that are absolutely forbidden in specific culture. Performances of taboos are met with stricter punishment. Examples of taboos are the cannibalism and incest. It must be noted that taboos are not universal, and some societies do not allow behavior that are considered repugnant in others. Reinforcing the non-practice of taboo behaviors are the laws that are enacted by the state. Laws consist of rules and regulations that are implemented by the state, making them from the prime source of social control. Violations of laws are met with punishment, fines, and ostracism and imprisonment. Next topic tayo is about status and role. Our forms of social interaction are always within the context of our status, and that are people we are interacting with. Kagaya ng iba tayo magsalita, iba tayo mag-behave or kumilos, depende sa iba't ibang set ng tao na hinaharap natin everyday. You have a set of vocabularies also, and nonverbal cues that you use for your parents only, na hindi mo naman ginagamit sa mga kaibigan mo. A status is an individual's position in his or her society which carries with it as a set of defined rights and obligation. Your status also as a student comes with obligations and rights which are defined as your roles. Ano yung roles? Roles are the sets of expectation from people who occupy particular status, from the vocabulary that they would use to their performance of their statuses. These are all within the framework of roles. The behavior of the individual within a social space in accordance to his ay tinatawag na role performance. Sometimes, itong status na to has multiple roles attached to it. Yung multiplicity of roles na tinatawag ay sometimes called as role set. Kagaya ng your teacher's role is not just to educate you. He or she also has the role of being your guardian while you are away from your parents. As human are capable of occupying various statuses simultaneously, conflict may arise in the variety of roles that they have to perform. A single mother, for example, who is working full-time, two equally important roles ang ginagampanan niya. She has the role of being your parent, a single parent, who must provide for her child. However, given her other status which require her to perform role of wage earner, a conflict on which role she needs to prioritize sometimes arises. Alam ko familiar kayo sa ganyang situation. Role conflict stems from the divergent expectation of the statuses that an individual simultaneously occupies, and such conflict may create role strain on the individual. This implies that the individual is having difficulty in performing the role required of him or her. In the case of the single mother with a full-time job, role strain might have caused her to choose which role she will have to continue performing and which role she needs to discontinue. This process of discontinuing with a role ay tinatawag na role exit. Individuals would often have the role exit to either address a role strain or to indulge the new role set. Our next topic is about conformity and deviance. Isa ito sa napakahalagang topic natin for today. Na naranasan mo na ba na mag-act differently sa ina-act ng majority? Or how do they respond to your statement and actions by doing that? These are the questions that must be considered when discussing this concept, the deviance and conformity. Ano nga ba ang conformity? Conformity is a yes. It is the act of following rules and goals of one society. This behavior is often met with rewards and acceptance from other members of the society. And while deviance naman is saying no, o yung violate mo in the prescribed social norms. It is an act of deviance are often associated with stigma. Narinig nyo na siguro yun before. A stigma is a strong sense of disapproval on non-conforming behavior from members of the society. When deviance is within the context of legal structures, it may even be considered as a crime or a violation of a law. Because deviance is always juxtaposed from the norms, which changes based on the environmental factors, it is also constantly changing as it is socially constructed. The actions that are considered deviant vary per society and per social status. There are several theories that explains the existence of the deviance from the groups of people or human and the deviance or act. Ito yung mga sumusunod. Social control theory, rational choice theory, differential association theory, labeling theory, conflict theory, and structural functionalist theory. Meron po akong inattach sa Genyo about dito sa lesson na ito. Based on this perspective, Merton, 1957, created a model illustrating the types of responses that individuals have toward social norms with regard to two variables, tinatawag na cultural goals and institutional means. What is cultural goals? It consists of values that are important for the society, and the institutional means naman are the process that have been established through social structures such as the government, school, church, and even family. In Merton's typology, individuals who accept their society's cultural goals and that of the process to accomplish it are all labeled as conformists, whereas those who accept the goal but not the process are called innovators. Such individuals are bent toward achieving the same social goals using an alternative approach. Individuals who reject the goal but accept the process are prone to ritualism as they perform the social norms without subscribing the social goals that such lead to. Those who reject both the goals and the approach are the process of rhetoricism, which would redefine the goals and process in societies in form of rebellion. Nevertheless, this theory argues that deviance is important in maintaining the social structure of society. It bonds the members of the society in their common rejection of deviant behavior. It also provides members of the society with guidelines on appropriate behavior with the displays of unacceptable and stigmatized action. For our last topic for today, we have the social control. To maintain the social order and stability, social control is needed. There are two elements that promote the social control are internalization and sanction. Internalization is an integral part of communicating and incorporating social norms to an individual's personality. It is in this process that an individual is made to automatically conform to the dictates of his or her society through the cost-benefit orientation. One key element in ensuring that individuals are able to internalize social norms is to establish the sanction. What happens if you decide not to do your homework? Di ka nagpapasa. Di ka nakikipag-interact sa teacher mo. Possible outcomes include the following. Number 1, possible na mag-zero ka or mababa ang grades na maibigay sa'yo. Getting a stern warning on how to be better child from your parent. And pangatlo, maaring malabel ka na ikaw ay tamad na bata. Consider all those possible repercussions of not completing your homework. Would you opt to complete it or still sidestep it? Sanctions are powerful in leading an individual to conform to social norms. Despite the individual's inclination to conform or pagsunod, when the sanction is strong, there is a high possibility that he or she will decide to follow the norm instead. Sanctions can be categorized into these categories: formal sanctions, informal sanctions, and positive sanctions. These are the actions or statements that punish or threaten to punish an unacceptable behavior which enforce conformity to the deviant. There are general categories can be combined to form specific typologies of sanctions. See the table below. Okay, para sa mga students ko na nanonood dito sa lesson ko, meron po tayong performance task. Who has been the biggest influence in your socialization? Your parents, friends, nakilala mo noon? Kakilala mo ngayon? Create a small appreciation post on your social media account and tag that person you want to thank for. And mention nyo ako sa comment box para malaman ko na ginawa nyo tong performance task na to. Okay?